All right, so we'll have Lisa talk a little bit. Yeah.
Okay. I will also, I guess, go through my specific interviews and like what I learned from each one. My first interview was for Yale, and it was like the hardest just because I was most nervous. The woman was actually, she graduated from Yale a long time ago, and so when I would ask her questions about it, it was hard for her to, relate. She said, oh, I was in one of the first class that actually accepted women, so it's like totally different. So we couldn't really connect on that level. But we did meet in a coffee shop, and it was just scheduled for about 45 minutes to an hour, but it actually went on for like 2 hours. So make sure you set aside like enough time for a longer interview, because the longer it is, I feel like it's usually better if it's longer. That means you have a lot to talk about, which was good. She asked me what other, she told me she wasn't supposed to ask me, and then she said, what other schools are you applying to? And then it's not really a comfortable question to answer because you don't want to like give them your whole list. So I was very general about it. I said like some UC schools in California and some on the East Coast, but Yale's definitely my top choice. And she didn't really ask beyond that, which is good. One thing I did realize that I had to deal with was she asked about like current events kind of. So make sure in the days leading up to your interview you do read up on the news and like read up on what's going on, so you can have something intelligent to add when they talk about current events. And then my next interview was for Princeton, and this one it wasn't a group interview, but it's like where they pick a day and a spot. It was in LA, so I had to drive like half an hour. They pick a day and they kind of call in everyone in the LA area for interviews that day, and they have like a whole they had like 10 interviewers and then interviews going on at all times. And then this one, I knew it would have a set time limit since they like scheduled everyone in, so I knew it was just going to be 45 minutes. It wasn't an office building, so I dressed more formally in business attire. And group interviews, well, not group interviews, but going to one of these things isn't as favorable, just because you go there and you see everyone else who's vying for the same spots that you are. But in the same way, he was younger and he was really friendly and found it well. So and then after that, I had my Harvard interview. One thing you should do is when they email you and you get the name of the person who's going to interview you, you should look them up on Google. It's not weird because I looked him up and he has like a Wikipedia page, and he was like the executive producer of Lost, and he was one of Time's 100 most influential people. So it was good that I knew that before I went into the interview, because knowing a little bit about what he did and that he's like really famous did I guess it kind of made me intimidated, but it was good to know beforehand. So I met him in his like really big office, and when you meet in an office building, that generally means business attire. When you meet in a coffee shop, it means dress nicely. And that interview went, pretty well. He didn't really talk about Lost, so it was good. And one thing I realized you should do is make sure you have good intelligent questions to ask, because like Paul and Ishan said, part of the interview process is so that you can learn about the school. So they always ask you if you have questions, and you want to ask questions that for information that can't be found online, or else it just looks like you didn't do your research. And a lot of times I ask them about personal experiences, did you ever get a chance to study abroad at your school, or how has this school affected your career? And questions that they can talk about their personal lives rather than just general information are usually good. After that, I had my Duke interview, and this was probably the one that I felt most comfortable with, and I felt best about this one. And you can really tell when you have a good interview and when an interviewer really does like you. And it turns out that I previously knew her because she was a counselor at this camp, so it went really well, and she was really friendly. And all the interviewers are friendly, and none of them will be mean to you. Some are just more formal or more informal. And then my last one was with UPenn. This one was different because it was a phone interview because she was from San Diego. And phone interviews are different because, you can't see them in person, obviously. So I would prefer an in-person interview, but it was different, and you have to learn how to convey your personality just through the phone. What I took away most from all my interviews was like Ishan said, talking about your extracurriculars, they can really tell if you do have a genuine interest in something. So it is important to just talk about, like, be honest with what you have done. Because if you just talk about something that, like, you kind of didn't really, like, do that much in high school, but you think it'll, like, look good, that doesn't work because they can tell, like, what you've done and, like, how you've, like, really been involved in things. So that is really important. And, basically, I don't know. Do you have any questions?